Aloha and welcome to Tiki Tuesday Talks. Super excited to invite some friends from London. What's up, guys?
Hi, how are you? How's everyone?
What's happening over there? You just got there, right?
Yeah, so we're a little jet lagged. We've had a few wacky delays on the way here. We brought my cat from Brooklyn via Paris to London, so it was quite the adventure.
It's been a journey.
And now you're in quarantine.
Yeah.
Right on.
It's a good thing we really like
each other. To hang with you.
Yeah.
Steve, what's up?
Hi. How are you?
The smuggler shirt on.
I got my smuggler shirt on. I'm ready for today. I'm looking great. Look at this. I got like 2 new leaves. Aaron and I were just talking about it. I'm getting a lot of
Aaron's plant.
Yeah.
Plant life. Aaron, what's happening?
What's going on? How are you, man?
I'm good. You're back in the plant lair.
Yeah, man. Tiki Oasis in Baltimore. Here we go.
Right on. Super excited. See you guys in a bit.
Cool.
All right. So a little background. The topic today, Doom Tiki, creating cultural appreciation through cocktails. With Chockie, as you've seen, this is presented by Real McCoy and Avwa. Excited to be a part of it. As usual, chat box and questions. If you guys are on Crowdcast or Facebook Live, please do send questions our way. We'll interject as we go. Feel free to share the event, create watch parties. Always appreciated. Tip jar, PayPal at Chocktails. Always appreciate you guys supporting our guests. Presentation will be 30 to 40. Cocktail session 10. 5 questions with Sergio. We got everybody together on this one. A little background on Chockie, founder of Doom Tiki. So Chockie is an award-winning bartender, brand ambassador, and founder of the awesome Doom Tiki event. She hails from Los Angeles, has been in Brooklyn for over 15 years until, I guess, today or yesterday.
Last week.
A close connection to her Pomo and Paiute heritage, as well as previous advocacy work for underrepresented groups in the bar industry, means she brings a unique perspective to an industry lacking in indigenous presence. Best known for innovative cocktail building techniques, beautifully designed brand and event art, advocacy within the spirits industry. Super excited to have you. I'll pass it off to you now.
All right.
Your deck up here.
I'll hit play in just a second. Bacon saying hi.
All right, let's get that close up.
There we go. Thank you, Sergio.
Sure.
And now that we've done the funny, let's do the presentation.
Let's do the presentation.
All right, I'm gonna hit play. All right. I can't tell. Can you guys see me right now? Because I can't see what's going on. I just see slides.
You look great. You're good. You're perfect. And just roll with it.
All right. So Doom Tiki, creating cultural appreciation through cocktails. In order to understand what Doom Tiki is and why we do it, we have to start from the very beginning. And as addressed in Mariah Kunkel's presentation, which was, I would say, one of my favorite Tuesday Tiki talks. I think that was like a really strong one, and I'm so excited to be following her momentum.
So it was such a great session. If you guys haven't seen that, it's still up on our Facebook and our YouTube. So definitely check it out.
Yeah. So the intoxicating flavor of colonization, we must move forward with the understanding that there are elements of imperialism, cultural appropriation, and selective ignorance in regards to Tiki. I mean, we've addressed this. We've had talks about it. We're setting this now as something that we just need to address. And part of this presentation is to kind of showcase a few of the bartenders that Doom Tiki has worked with and a few of our concepts, which I'll get to in a little bit. But I'm just going to lay the groundwork out and sit now and just say, that's been addressed. That's the white elephant in the room. Let's move on. So Doom Tiki was created in July of 2019. At first, it was for my birthday. I really wanted to put together something very doomy. And, I was talking to a couple other bartenders and Austin Hartman. I'm like, oh, I really want to do this thing. And, it'll be fun. I have these kind of cool ideas. So, Austin Hartman was like, I have a bar, do whatever you want. And that's kind of how it started. We wanted to do something that had what I enjoy the most about like Tiki, which is the cocktails, the storytelling elements. And I really do like the idea of escapism. So, we wanted to kind of put all of those together and then just kind of present it in some way kind of unexpected. And, metal and Tiki have worked together. There's a few other people that did it. There's Kindred. There's been other pop-ups.
Oh, yeah, Kindred, San Diego.
Yep. And then also on top of that, let's be honest, a lot of us bartender people, especially that get drawn toward these cocktails and things like that, and like tropical concepts and, reviving classics and finding ways to make them different, interesting, modern, but still kind of stick to the soul of it. You're going to be a nerd. Also, if you really get into metal, as I can completely say, or any music genre, you're also going to be a nerd. So it seemed to be like the perfect crossover. And on top of that, like a lot of my bartender friends were into both. So, it was a fun event. We originally did it as a fundraiser for races. And we did really well. We raised about $1,000. And after that, we decided to keep it going. And it's kind of evolved. And up here, I have our original flyer, which is something I put together. And I will confess, part of the reason I kept this going is I really do like making the flyers for it.
Couple things on that. One is I've never, in other lives I've lived, I've never encountered so many people who are so into like metal, hardcore, etc. As I have in, the bartender world, which is super fun. Most people don't know, but I was in a hardcore band in DC for like 3 years, called The Day in Black and White. So check it out sometime, I guess, but super fun experience.
Yeah. I mean, music is like also part of like what made my relationship with my husband, who's also like a cocktail person. He works at a little bar you guys might know called Trailer Happiness. You should go check it out. It's great. But, like part of our connection was that he likes punk music and he's more into like the East Coast hardcore. I'm from the West Coast, so we have clashing. But, one of the things I do like about this kind of whole cocktail concept is that, music is an important part of it. And I think we all know that when we go into a bar, or when we did in before times, having a great soundtrack was definitely part of creating like a good experience that made you want to keep going back to that bar. So we do use the word Tiki in the name because we felt that it would create a bridge to people already connected in the scene and those that are kind of vaguely familiar with it. And, a lot of our friends in the Pacifica community aren't happy with it. And where our official policy on it is, if this is problematic and the time comes where we need to change it, and, we're totally down to do it. But for the time being, we're kind of using it just to kind of draw on the people and kind of start these discussions, So I think it's a lot of it that we do is kind of like making things kind of like halfway. So when we have our participants do Doom Tiki, this is our basic 5.
Before you get into that, which I'm really excited about, just want to pause on that too and say that I think for us, we have the same feeling about it. We actually just adjusted our logo to remove the tiki head and use a palm tree instead. But I do think the concept of using the name Tiki is a way to connect to people to the movement. And I think it's super rad what you guys are thinking about in terms of like, how do you modernize that and make it relevant more broadly?
Yeah.
And then just maybe a primer for people who are into Tiki but have no knowledge of metal. Do you just want to give people a little heads up on what Doom is about?
So most of the music that we use, like any good bar or cocktail concept, no matter how complicated and cool you make it, needs to be approachable, because as much as we create drinks and like environments for people to experience our hospitality and creativity, we also need to make sure that what we create is, people want to be there. And most genres of metal are kind of like loud and fast. Doom and stoner and sludge is like slower, kind of like chill. There's like there's doom jazz. So, if you're gonna like kind of chill somewhere, this is the kind of metal that I think is really approachable. And sometimes people like pretty like, shocked from like, oh yeah, I threw in this old Fleetwood Mac song and this old Queen song that totally fits into the genre. And the other thing too is, different communities all around the world, have great punk scenes, metal scenes, and things like that. So, by using kind of music as a theme around it, it's another way to like bring people together. So, when we have our participants, this is our basic guide, and we don't do idols because it's inappropriate. I've been gifted a mug that was made out of what looked to be a sacred native thing once. And I was like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. We don't use sexually exploitive imagery or anything like that, just because with the history of colonization, sexual exploitation, and stuff like that Mariah addressed, we just don't want to keep that going, and we can do something better, like a skull or something, and without having to wonder if it was inspired by some 13-year-old that was topless that somebody did engraving with at some point. And we don't do racial caricature mugs just because it's gross. And
right.
Like, that's not cool. So, we don't do appropriative names. We don't like use other people's languages for names unless somebody's from there and they want to do that. And we don't use like colonist imagery for cocktail names. So we're not going to use something like the Missionary's Downfall. And we like to try to avoid the tropes of exoticism or exoticization. So like, it's unfamiliar but familiar, and we just kind of want to make it all on kind of equal footing. And then we always ask our participants to research the organization that we're fundraising for. And we use the term fundraise because it sounds cooler, it's fun, and it's a pretty cool hashtag. So a lot of the organizations we work with really like benefit the communities that are still dealing with the after effects of colonization, whether it be Indigenous in America, whether it be Chamorro from, Guam, whether it's like, we even have done things with the Maori community, the Indigenous communities in Canada. Our last fundraiser was for a couple organizations that help like Mexican mothers create small businesses and things like that are environmentally sound and sustainable. So when we look for our organizations, we want to make people aware of them, and we want people to understand why they're necessary. And then the other thing too is, if we're going to create an experiential night, I always put together a few albums. I have like my approachable, kind of like weird, and like if you want to get really deep into it, different albums. And I'm like, listen to this music and use that to make your cocktail. And sometimes that can throw people off because not everybody not everybody wants to be inspired by music, but that's how I do a lot of my drink concepts. So let's get into the meat of it. So what is
just to pause for 1 second on that? I think that's super rad. It's very helpful, for people who are putting on things, who are engaged in the scene, I think, to have good guidelines to think about as to how to make better choices, right? I think
we kept them simple because we trust that anybody that knows what we're about and wants to participate, wants to do the work, and they care about what we care about. And a lot of people learn things, like one of the organizations, SEED, which is an Indigenous youth climate justice. A lot of people didn't know that there were Indigenous kids in Australia fundraising when everything was on fire. And, it got shared a lot. So, I think it's cool to like show people that had no idea what any of this stuff is, all the interesting things that are going on that aren't as mainstream as far as like different Indigenous cultures and things like that,
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right. So again, back to the white elephant in the room, because we're just this is, cultural appropriation really is kind of a buzzword, and especially around Halloween, all the debates come up and things like that. And, everyone's like, well, Indians shouldn't wear jeans then if I can't be Pocahontas for Christmas and Halloween and all this dumb stuff. So, what is cultural appropriation? So Oxford Dictionaries, which actually put the phrase into the official lexicon in 2017, defines cultural appropriation as the unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of customs, practices, ideas, etc., of one person or society by members of another, a typically more dominant people or society. And what's important about this part is the kind of dominant aspect of it, because that doesn't put both cultures on equal footing. And, it's been kind of like, oh, well, this is a liberal word, a social justice word. And it's not even about that. It's, really about, acknowledging some of the problematic elements that are in American culture, other cultures, and things like that, and how it can be harmful because it's there and it just simply needs to be acknowledged. And that leads us to cultural appreciation, which is when you earnestly seek out to learn or explore a different culture, you learn, you listen, you understand, and you seek to honor its beliefs and traditions. Not for you, but to honor the culture and the people. So this kind of changes the dynamic. In this case, this makes you the student, which kind of puts you right about here. So that kind of switches things around, and it allows people from cultures where, like American culture, you don't really have to think too much about it. Like, I know in Europe sometimes they have America parties and use the solo cups as the drink cups and things like that. But it's not the same thing as having like something that's sacred and religious to you used to drink, something out of, and that's not cool. And that's also part of the reason that we sometimes have fun playing with like the metal and like Catholic images, because as someone that's indigenous from California that's dealt with a long crazy history of what the effect of the missionaries on like my people are, I think it's perfectly fine to have a little tongue-in-cheek fun. But a lot of people actually have been offended by some of the stuff we've used. Like they get mad that we use upside down crosses and like pentagrams and stuff, and they're just like, well, this isn't cool. You're taking our religious iconographies and you're disrespecting them. I'm like, bingo, let's talk now. So sometimes I think it's the like punk rock teenager in me that will kind of never go away. But I think sometimes having to shock people into seeing sometimes is one of the ways to reach people. That's also why Doom Tiki really especially as like the far right groups like the Boogaloo Boys started co-opting like tiki shirts and things like that. And when the community started to get offended by this symbol that, is associated with fun times, togetherness, and community, and turning into a symbol of hate, that really opened up a lot of people that I had previously kind of, written off a little bit, and I was like, oh, now they're kind of trying to understand it. And a lot of them appreciate the culture, but they don't necessarily have the context to understand how some of the ways that they think they're appreciating the culture might be harmful or disrespectful or just, in bad taste. So, I think a lot of what does have to do with, the positive elements of like a whole like tropical cocktail concept escapism is the elements of appreciation.
Very cool.
And this brings us to what is cultural exchange. So cultural exchange implies a mutual and beneficial sharing of cultures and beliefs. It is viewed as inevitable and contributing to diversity and free expression. It is seen as something which is actually done out of admiration of the culture being imitated with no intent to harm them. So use the hand thing again. This means like equality. And one of the differences between culture—
Wait, do that again. We were on the slides.
I like equality. There you go. So, that basically means that you're on an equal footing, and there isn't one culture, even if your culture is more dominant, that's more important or better, and you're being respectful. I think some of the interesting ideas of like cultural exchange are like things like restaurants that pop up in like neighborhoods. Like one of my favorite spots in downtown LA was a kosher burrito spot. I'm like, that's really cool. I wonder how that came about, and how these cultures came together to create this food concept. So when you do cultural exchange, you see the culture that you're interested in as equal to yours, and you don't treat it like a museum object or past tense or anything like that. And you learn about the people as people. Maybe go meet some people that are from what you're into, and don't put them in a position as a monolith that represents everything you think. And the other thing that's important with cultural exchange and appreciation is there's consent involved. You're not going in and taking what you want and doing what you think is cool with it. You're talking to the people and creating a good exchange and a positive and better relationship. And you're sharing what's beautiful about different cultures. And I think that's where the importance lies. And I think that's important with anything that happens with the whole like tiki, tropical, escapist, nautical. What are the other words we use, honey? I think I got all of them. But I think like moving forward, this is the discussion. And I think using appreciation exchange should be the building block of like concepts.
Yeah, for sure. To me, it's really useful, again, kind of going back as somebody who has an event in Tiki, who we're engaged with the bar community, who's looking at how do I express the positives of this tradition and the escapism, which obviously we all need more than ever, right? And have great drinks that are rooted in some of that, but how do I move it into a place where it is appreciative versus appropriative and can have a future and can evolve and not just be stuck in this one kind of way of looking at it, right?
Yeah. And, like that's the really great thing I think that's kept me in the bartending, cocktail, hospitality, liquor industry for all these years is, that we're innovators. We make the drinks that your aunt's going to make at your Christmas party in 5 years because it was really
That's pretty cool. Could happen.
We inspire your dad's friend that really used to surf in the 60s to make Mai Tais. We do that.
For sure.
In fact, I mean, let's be honest. Tiki is in itself is a subculture created by bartenders.
Yep.
And one of the biggest things that I've noticed in in Europe versus the U.S. is in the U.S. it's a lifestyle and it's a culture, whereas in Europe it's definitely more of a cocktail culture. So that's been kind of interesting navigating that as I've been going back and forth. So let's move on to our Zoom Tiki and what I mean by cultural exchange and cocktails. So during lockdown, after freaking out for a while, surviving COVID, don't recommend it.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out how we were going to do things online. And, after attending some horrible Zoom happy hours and some necessary things for professional stuff, I was like, well, what would I want to watch? I don't rum tastings are awesome. Love them. Cool. But that's not going to appeal to everybody, so one of the things that Austin Hartman and I came up with was using, we kind of call it like a reclamation of Tiki, where we take different bartenders from different cultures and we're like, hey, make us a cocktail. Share with us about who you are and where you're from, how you want to do it. Let's take elements of food, whatever you want to share, and let's tell the story of who you are and where you're from, how you want to do it. And let's share things in a way that you want it to be shared instead of people coming in and taking things and I mean, especially a lot of restaurants, even in the US and other places, do end up becoming kind of like the TGI Fridays of Mexico. If you're going into a Mexican spot and there's people asleep in serape paintings against a cactus and there are things that we get into. So I wanted a chance to stop doing that and move on and really let, and kind of be okay, we can do these things, but we can do them in a way that kind of makes everybody happy. You get to try the food, experience something cool. And then this person feels like they've been able to share something in a way that was respected and not taken. And I think that's the most important part about this. So
I think what's also rad about that is that it allows for experimentation beyond just the classic books, the classic recipes that Beach Bum uncovered, and thinking about it as this is the only way to do it. I think it allows for us to think about all these new flavors that are available to us, these new traditions that have come about or really have existed, but now we've become aware of it in the US and Europe in the decades since the 30s and 40s when all these recipes are written, right? So it really allows for like a path forward almost on a different level as well to me.
Yeah, and that's kind of just like what we wanted to do. We're like, we don't really want to make everyone mad, even though sometimes they do get mad at us.
I love that you make people mad. Super fun.
Yeah, like I said.
Really, really good at it.
Oh, but I mean, part of it too is, we're like, we get that you care about what should be referred to as the Pacifica community, Oceania, like Micronesian, as opposed to just Polynesian, that there's like a certain respect there, and you guys do fundraising. Let's involve some of those people and see how they fit into this. I think that there is room for community to be creative with like cultural exchange and stuff in every industry. I mean, every great bartending city in the world is diverse. Like, no matter where you go, people bring that diversity, and that's why the cocktails that, especially in like the last 10 years, have been really interesting in that sense. So I have a few of the flyers that we've made, and I'll just go over a few of the different Zoom Tiki, Doom Tiki things we've done, and I'll explain some of the concepts and some of the ideas. So the first is Taylor Ray, who is at Dead Rabbit and at Paradise occasionally. So Taylor is from Puerto Rico, and this is the flyer we made. And she did a whole concept based on like some Santeria and things like that, and did cocktails that reference different goddesses and things like that. And, it was really the first time we tried this. And, the response was great. Like, it was creative, it was interesting, and the feedback was amazing because people learned about stuff, and people, wanted to know more about, what this cultural element was and why she was sharing it and all of these other things. And, so when that went well, we decided to kind of keep going with it. So we have Mahir Kelkar from Paradise Lounge as well, who's from India. And he did a great Zoom Tiki where he did some concepts that had like cashew or shots. I was trying to get him to do a mango lassi fat wash, but I think I might do that on my own because I was like, this seems obvious. But he did some crazy, amazing things with different spices. And then since it was lockdown, he was staying with his folks in New Jersey. He brought in his family and they made food and he like shared these.
Nice.
And it was amazing. It felt like I had cocktails and dinner and learned by being actually there. Also, he and I worked on this really cool Bollywood movie inspired poster.
My personal favorite is just incredible.
Shit, what happened?
Uh-oh.
Yep. Hold on one second.
We're just hanging.
All right, I can still hear you. Let me reduce this.
You're fine. Take your time.
Cool. There we are.
There we go.
All right, moving forward. So one of the other ones we did recently was Tiki Scandinavia. And I will mention that Taylor has also attended Tiki by the Sea, as has Selma. And this
Hi, guys.
So we have Selma Sibiek, who's from
Danish.
Yeah, she's Danish. Serena Anderson, whose family is Sami, and she's Norwegian. And Mario, who's my husband's roommate at the time, that is, how do we explain Mario?
Well, he's culturally Swedish, more or less. But his father's from Jamaica, his mom's from Hong Kong. He was born in Colombia, and he was adopted by Swedish people. So,
it was really fun to bring him in because he has like a wide array of like,
influences.
Influences, and speaks a bunch of languages. But it was really funny because I think one of the most beautiful moments of this particular episode was when people started singing like songs in Swedish that they remembered, and there was like licorice involved and like really cool things like that. And like everybody stayed friends and books were purchased and things like that. And people were like, oh, we never thought that somewhere that's like snowy half the time. I'm like, it's not snowy half the time. Have you been there? With the tiki concept. I'm like, well, it was more about creating like, we used the blueprints, but they brought in different elements. And there's kind of like, well, let's, and I don't know if you know this about Scandinavians, but they love foraging stuff. So there were a lot of like foraged ingredients and stuff like that I was like, wow, that's interesting. I wonder if that can apply in different ways if we're gonna, do what's the right word I'm looking for?
Culturally inspired drinks?
Yes, culturally inspired drinks, going forward. It's kind of cool that to have these examples to kind of work from and be like, oh, well, if they were foraging for stuff and I'm in California, maybe I'll do something with some of like the edible flowers here.
Local sustainable ingredients.
I've been trying to kind of do an acorn orgeat, but it's, I don't know. There's a lot of tannins involved, but eventually.
Now that you're in London, you'll have to use the national Stella Artois.
Yeah. And then this is a Doom Tiki War Party with Nickel Morris, who is Sammy, and he's also Indigenous as well. And I was introduced to him by his partner, Lindsay, that runs Camp Run Amok and stuff like that. So, he and I wanted to do an Indigenous one. So he created this great cocktail that was using Delback from Arizona, where he grew up, Baijiu, because he had spent some time bartending in Hong Kong, and his super lemon juice, which is like pretty much taking all of the lemon and making 5 drinks or 5 times as much juice out of it, which in itself is a very like old school kind of like Indigenous Native American way of approaching everything. There's reasons people have like jokes like, oh, they use every part of the buffalo. So, it was really cool to do that. And for me, this was a particularly moving episode because in my 20 years of bartending and hospitality experience, I've worked with maybe 4 or 5 Indigenous bartenders. And the most that I've worked with have actually been through Doom Tiki. So it was really cool to kind of do this together with him. And also when he was in Hong Kong, they had a tiki night there at his bar. And he's like, well, I'm not going to do something South Pacific. So they created like a whole Americana thing, which I thought was an interesting concept. Cool. So this brings us to the drinks portion. So these are some cocktails that I think showcase this cocktail philosophy very well. We have the Dirty Pineapple from Seth Allen when he was running the cocktail program at Gupshup. I have Dragonaut, which is inspired by sleep, which I'm sure you're really into.
Oh, good.
This is
love that band the most.
This is a Doom Tiki cocktail that I did when I was doing brand ambassador work for Ming River. And then we have Saturn Rising from Brian Evans, who also
Brian.
And this is for his Yaki Tiki concept that they do in Brooklyn, which is Japanese Tiki. So these are all, I think really illustrate what I'm talking about. So let's do a little breakdown.
Well, before you go there, I just want to insert a couple comments. One is, I think it's really rad to see the use of unique native spirits, right? And thinking about that differently. I think that's the wave of the future. Really excited when people play around with things like aquavit, and pisco and things like that, and use them differently. It's super cool. Also, if anybody's seen Gummo, the scene where the kid's riding the bike down the road, it's playing Dragonaut, is like the most epic scene, and an extremely fucked up, disturbing movie, but a really epic scene.
Wait, The deck you sent me said we weren't supposed to curse. I can say.
Oh, did it?
Thanks.
Yeah, some corporate shit. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do.
All right. So here's just three cocktails, and they all have pineapple. So we're going to call this section "Consider the Pineapple," because one of the most important things I think when you're getting into doing this, like, is like learning different ingredients and how they're utilized in other cultures, is finding like one common ingredient. So I have some breakdowns and some notes on each one. So for the dirty pineapple on this, you can see that there's tequila, garam masala, washed pineapple, Thai bird chili, and sweet hibiscus and lime. And also, one of the things that I thought was really beautiful about this cocktail is a lot of these ingredients are used across all the cultures kind of represented here. So we have like Mexico with the tequila, we have with the pineapple, we have India, and then the Thai bird chili is the green version I believe is used with an Indian food, but we have like Thailand in there, and then hibiscus gets used across all three. So and cinnamon is really popular in Mexican stuff. So this is a beautiful melding of different flavors that also pays tribute to, the what was I going to say? Sorry, I'm a little jet lagged, so sometimes I have to stop and pause. I'm running out like
but they tie all of them together. They tie all these cultures.
Yeah, they tie them all together, and I think they showcase just as much familiarity as differences within this. So this cocktail that I did is I have a couple like homemade ingredients, but I made sure this was my tribute to duck sauce, because I'm working on a series of cocktails inspired by Chinese American restaurants and its ties with within the relationship with tiki and Chinese restaurants, especially since as there were in the mid-century, there was a lot of like movement towards the suburbs, not being from that community wasn't always welcoming to outsiders. So a lot of the Chinese restaurants had to adapt, can you answer? Had to adapt different like
package.
Yeah, they had to adapt to like a bunch of. There we go. Yay! Okay, so where were we? So a lot of them had to adapt to creating tiki cocktail programs as a means to survival, and they also had to alter a lot of their food to appeal to Americans. So duck sauce is made from pickled plum and apricot, and I really wanted to do a syrup to kind of pay tribute to that, especially since a lot of like. One of the things that I always kind of bummed me out about, like when you go, especially on the East Coast where duck sauce and like a lot more of these lounges were bigger, is that like they were forced to, in order to survive in this kind of world where you're constantly adapting and not welcome as much, they were forced to sell cocktails of themselves and, in these caricatures and Buddhas and things. And I was like, that's not cool, So I've been doing a lot of research, and I actually have a little presentation that I'll be posting on my Instagram about this history. But I really wanted to pay tribute to the relationship with that, and then also just kind of like show people like, you can do like your tiki drinks with anything. And if this is going to be a, culture created from many other places, then I think the spirit should reflect that as well. And here our pineapple is an acid adjusted variation that's a Szechuan peppercorn Don's mix, essentially.
Will
And then
people be able to find the specs to these in the future?
I will forward all of these specs to you and we can post it somewhere.
Cool.
And all of these are on all of our different Instagrams and things like that. So the Dizzy Sparrow at Yaki Tiki that Brian did has like coffee, sochu, rum, Campari, banana. It's a variation on a jungle bird. And, I think it's a really beautiful way to combine all of these things. And his garnish game is something else.
Oh, he's a master.
Yeah, it was one of my last stops.
It's ridiculous. I just love reposting his photos on my Instagram because I always know they're going to be super dope.
His garnishes, I'm just like, wow, why didn't I think to do that? One of my last stops before I moved from New York was definitely he and Seth are actually working together there. So I went to visit both of them on my way out. And he gave me this beautiful, like, very fancy rum and Coke with sherry concept served in a Coke bottle. And I was like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I took like 100 pictures of it. But even as we can see here, like, you know, I think it makes sense to use, there should be more coffee and rum, I think, especially if we talk about like the history of colonization and port and how those kind of all tie in together, especially with pineapple. But, you know, this is just another example how you can take like the classic blueprints of these drinks and readjust them and add different spirits and ingredients to kind of like, you know, do these programs. And nothing's named after anything like, you know, offensive. We haven't really taken anything from anybody's cultures. And one of the things that I think is also in common about all of these cocktails is that they tell a story in a way too. And I think that's one of the most important things about experiential cocktail things is storytelling, because every single culture everywhere in the world has a good tradition of it. So here are some of the helpful tips that I tell people and my baby bartenders when I'm like, hey, it's really cool that you've made me 10 old fashions. What's next? I mean, like, this is cool. These are fun. Maple syrup, awesome. But, you know, like, this is how, you know, like, I really try to push everybody that I work with professionally and people that come to me to work on cocktail stuff to kind of like expand their minds and palettes on what they want to use. So here are my helpful tips. So I like to tell people to explore different types of cuisines for cocktail inspiration. If you find like one ingredient like the pineapple that we just used, and you go have El Pastor one day, and you go have like, you know, like pineapple fried rice somewhere else, these are two different examples of how pineapple can be used, and different ingredients goes with that. And by going to different types of restaurants and places and like with friends, families, and things like that, you see like how different ingredients are used to make these dishes and how each, you know, what's the best way to put this? You really see how people can interpret things differently, and it might give you some great ideas on how to change your drinks up, like when I had my year of tamarind. And I think also if you're doing like a cocktail, like what experience do you want to convey through your drink? Are you telling a story? Do you want to make it like, because Selma, when she did our Doom Tiki, she did a one inspired by Alf, you know, and it had like a tiki little thing to go with that when we did an outer space theme. So it's like, how are you going to take this concept that you're putting together and how are you going to use your drink to convey that? And the other thing that Damon Bolte from Grand Army has always, one of the things we bonded on is we're both OCD about trying our drink in 15-minute increments, because you know, as you create cocktails, you need to go, it's good to understand how when things melt and stuff like that, that things can change.
I've never had a drink last for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's because you're intoxicating. And then again, as I said, with the exploring different types of cocktail inspiration, again, look for ingredients that are used in multiple cuisine styles, explore different pairings, and as well as common ones too. Because the other thing is as much as you're going to learn about the different ways they do it, there are some ways like that are constantly together. So like tamarind and hibiscus are in several different cuisines together, you know? So I've had them in like a Trinidadian based cocktail thing. I've had them in Mexico, and I've had an Indian dish that had both tamarind and, you know, I'm like, oh, well, if all of these cultures are putting these together, maybe it's a good idea for me to do it. And then I also suggest finding a system for taking notes that you actually want to use and taking some time to review them, because as you're learning, it's important to remind, like whatever your note-taking technique is or however you mind things, it's important to kind of, you know, keep track of these, because as you evolve as a bartender, And as you create more cocktails and things, it's good to kind of review everything and go back and see how you've evolved, or maybe you have like a concept that kind of didn't work that you want to explore as you learn. And I think you can learn from yourself just as much as you learn from other people. And I think that you should also put as much care into naming your drink as you did coming up with it. And my other favorite idea that I really try pushing, especially with our Doom Tiki participants, is looking for unique spirits to incorporate into your cocktails. So baijiu, mezcal, and different regional liqueurs, aquavit, stuff like that. And again, what I said at the beginning to learn about these different ideas, I always suggest with a culture exchange and appreciation, you should seek out the people that know about the ingredients that you want to use, because that's the best way to learn, and it'll give you a really cool perspective on it. And then the last thing is have fun with it. It's a drink. It's supposed to be fun.
Awesome. Those are really good. Really
and
good.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to getting my mug, by the way.
All right. And that brings us to Sergio. And I'm going to switch out.
Yep.
Let me close.
Nope. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, that's the first. Hi, guys. Let's bring Steva back. Let's talk about some things. You're still muted.
I unmuted myself.
What do you want to talk about while we get them back on?
Chockie's helpful tips I thought were amazing. Thinking about how you're talking about what you name your drink being as important as the care you put into the ingredients. Because, it needs to be concise enough that someone doesn't feel intimidated to order it.
Yeah.
Right? So 3 to 4 words usually is my go-to.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a thing you can hear 1,000 times in a night.
All right, and we're back.
We played it up. It was cool. We were talking about your helpful hints in further detail.
It's as always, it is Richard Branson's fault.
And let me tell you, being in a long distance relationship turned marriage for the last few months.
Yeah.
His internet goes out occasionally from time to time, and I'm just like, oh wait, I'm moving there.
There you go. You gotta get that American internet,
For now.
Did you bring the American internet with you?
It must be in the boxes.
Do you guys just export democracy or?
No jokes about democracy till after the election. All right, I'm going to turn it over to.
All right, great. Let's talk about this cocktail, bro.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I just stood in front of the flag that I wanted to highlight. So that one.
Yeah, Real McCoy.
So
let's explain your relationship to Real McCoy and why.
Yeah, for those of you who know me, may know that I used to work for the Real McCoy, delicious Barbados rum, and then I had various dealings with Agua over the years as well. Today's sponsors, both obviously wonderful spirits.
Yeah, it was our love of cachaça that was one of our bonding points.
Yes.
When I was trying to.
Oh, love it.
I was hating on him.
And sort of all cane juice spirits really played an important part.
Sure.
Alcohol, cachaça.
Yes.
Yeah. So as mentioned at the beginning, I work at Trail of Happiness, represent.
Amazing bar. We're gonna have Sly on by the way soon too. He's gonna be joining us in a few weeks.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
Amazing. What is that on?
That's going to be on Creating Community, and we're doing that one on November 10th, if I'm correct.
He's very good at creating community.
Oh, that's the day after our London wedding party.
That's the day after our London wedding party.
There you go. I'm sure we'll see you guys out here.
I'd like to apologize in advance. So the thinking behind this cocktail was very much inspired by this cultural exchange and by the Zoom Tiki sessions that Chockie has talked about earlier. So it'll be using, as well as the 2 wonderful sponsor ingredients, which I was very happy with because it's 2 ingredients I genuinely love and I will happily make drinks with anytime. It'll be using some flavors that might be familiar to people who know Hungarian cooking and Hungarian drinks and flavors. I am from Hungary originally, just to just to clarify this. I've lived in the UK for the last 7 years, but I'm from there originally. So,
by the way, Sergio, we have a comment here.
Yes.
It says, "Hello, my pretty pineapple man. You're getting sexier every year, like a fine rum."
Question from Buckfast or in a cocktail. Was that Uncle George asking it?
No,
That must have been George Brown.
yeah, one of our friends, Meredith, created what's her last? I'm bad at Meredith.
Well, yeah, Meredith Olszewski. Yeah.
There we go.
So she's used Earn Brew syrup, but that actually came from George.
Yeah, but she made an amazing Ming River daiquiri with it, and it's this crazy orange color. So it's something that is now in my at some point in the future times we will do a Scottish inspired.
I've used Bucky before because it is the one crossover point between my love for like Scottish and Irish street punk and like weird London high-end bartending, because all high-end like hotel bartenders are in love with Buckfast here. And then also like the really, really rough street punk in Glasgow and Ireland is also really big on Buckfast. It's a really weird sort of crossover there.
Interesting.
Explain what Buckfast is real quick.
Buckfast is kind of like a vermouth. It's known as a tonic wine, but it's basically a vermouth being made by monks in Devonshire, which is in the southwestern corner.
Wine with caffeine, correct?
Yes, it's fortified caffeine.
I want to get involved in this.
And it's traditionally drunk in Glasgow. It's traditionally drunk with Red Bull. So like and it's got about 5 times as much caffeine as Coca-Cola does. So when you combine it with Red Bull, it is.
Go to a punk show.
Can
we get it in the U.S. or are you guys going to mail it?
It's affectionately known as Wreck the House juice in Scotland.
Amazing. I used to work for Red Bull, so I'll have to make them aware of this amazing combination.
Instead of like maybe, I don't know, Jaeger bombs or vodka Red Bulls, the new signature serve should be Buckfast and Red Bull.
All right.
Oh, but you need to add cachaça so we can make.
There you go.
Yep, and cachaça. Yep. So back to the last living dinosaur. So we've got Real McCoy 5, this delicious Barbados rum. It's aged for 5 years. It uses Real McCoy only uses first refill barrels. So it's got a fair bit of that classic American oak, of vanilla and caramel and spice. I mean, I always recommend this for people who are into rye whiskey. It makes for an incredible rum Manhattan. So we're using an ounce of that. And I'm pouring into this shaker below me. It's really weird to pour drinks while you're sitting down.
It's the future.
It's absolutely
everybody does now on my show. It's hilarious.
And up next is Agua Prata. Now, Agua, delicious cachaça. I'm sure I don't need to introduce it to you. But anytime I taste it, one of the things that immediately come into mind after the cane flavor is pear. I get a really heavy pear flavor, and now pear is something that's used in a lot of Hungarian desserts and a lot of drinks. Pálinka, which is essentially a very high-end eau de vie, is quite often made from Pois Williams pear. So we're using half an ounce of this. This will give us a lot of sort of fresh, grassy sugarcane flavors. So whereas the Real McCoy is very much a classic molasses rum with all the chocolate and leather and smoke and spice that you get from there, this is very much a classic cane juice spirit. You get much more of the grassy, earthy, fresh aroma.
And those two together are such great partners. They're so fun. They're so fun to pair up.
Third is what is quite possibly Hungary's most famous export. It is apart from myself, it is a
and wine.
It is a Tokai Osu wine.
Oh, that's what.
Yeah, so this is a really, really famous desert wine that's known very much worldwide. It is made from what are known as noble rod grapes. And for those of you who might be unfamiliar, what noble rod does to a grape is it dries it out. It dries all the water content out. So it really concentrates all the sugars and all the flavor. So when you ferment it, you're going to get this incredibly concentrated, flavorful, and very, very sweet wine. I mean, the 2009 vintage, I think, clocked in at like 900 grams of sugar per liter. That's essentially sugar syrup.
Wow.
It's but even on the lower end, it tends to be anywhere between 300 to 500 grams. So like, think of Pedro Jimenez sherry, that level of sweetness. So I'll
Did
be
I
using
mention
some
that
of
he has a
this.
sweet tooth? This probably explains a lot of it.
I'll be using an ounce of this. This will be the main sweetener in the drink.
So this is basically the new Bordeaux, is what we're
Yeah,
looking at.
yeah.
Highly collectible.
It's also the old
09 vintage.
I mean, it's pretty famous going back to about the. I mean, you've got a lot of sort of French and English sources calling from it from the 18th century onwards.
Wow.
It's been pretty famous internationally. It's got a lot of aromas of like stone fruit and raisins, and it's just it's really, really rounded and sweet and wonderful. And then for the sour ingredients in my cocktail, one of the things I'll be using is plum. Plum is, a lot of places, especially in Europe, tend to use maybe apricots or apples or peaches, or when you go more Mediterranean, you've got watermelons as the primary fruit in a lot of sort of sweets and salads and whatever. But in Hungary, plum is very much, plum jam and plums are one of the prime ones. So what I've done here is I've combined a bit of, I cooked down some plums with some sugar syrup, and then I combined it with this really nice high-end balsamic vinegar. This is a Modena IGP, so this is one of the sort of geographically protected, really nice balsamic vinegars. And I made the shrub out of the two of them. So this is a plum and balsamic shrub. So we'll put half an ounce in there. You really don't need a lot.
A little bit goes a long way.
It's very, very intense. And it's, but with balsamic vinegar, obviously you don't have that overwhelmingly bite. That huge bite that you sometimes get from acetic acid when you use various vinegars for making shrubs. And then the third one will be this. And I mean, just look at the color. It might not come through as perfectly on the camera, but it's incredibly vibrant.
Yeah.
This is homogenized clementine juice. So the idea for using this came from what Chockie mentioned earlier when she was working with Nickel. And homogenizing juice does something fairly similar to the super juice that Nickel used. Basically, we're using the oils in the peel of tangerines, which is a sweeter relative of orange. We're using the oils in the peel of tangerine to give it an even more rounded flavor. And this was made by my friends at Juiced in Time. Now they're a really cool supplier of juices for London bars. So this is freshly made every day. So I'll be using a little bit of this, and then I'm just going to disappear for 2 seconds while I ice up my shaker and my glass. Chockie will take over in the meantime.
All right.
Just take it over. Actually, hearing about all the flavors in the wine and all the different notes and things like that, it really explains a lot of Sergio's, classic cocktail ingredients like that. He loves sherries, he loves stone fruit and things like that. So I think that's kind of interesting. I'm kind of seeing a connection from having been raised drinking stuff like that, I think.
Cool. Yeah, super fun. I think this cocktail definitely meets the guidelines of what you guys were talking about before. And hopefully it provokes some people to think a little bit differently as they are building tiki tropical style drinks going forward.
And also, the cocktail song title is inspired by Cadaver with a K.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not familiar with them, they're one of my favorite bands. If you like early Sabbath.
I was just listening to Sabbath today. Sabbath.
Yeah, if you want some good kind of like stoner rock, kind of like metal stuff, definitely check them out. But Cadaver was our first concert date.
Yes.
Oh.
So we'll give this one a little shake.
So it's still very
Let's get it.
Woo! I mean, how cool does this shaker look? This belongs to Chockie, by the way, for now.
Very grim shaker.
And
by the way, I think
glass
I need to finally get a
very
reason.
important part in tiki, but obviously, as established, we're not using appropriative mugs. So it'll be Doom Tiki's official mascot.
Yeah.
This little Doom Kitty mug that I'm pouring into.
I need a reason to be on your show sometime, Chockie, so I can get some corpse paint treatment.
Oh, we will do this.
That'd be so badass.
So we can always do Doom Tiki by the Sea, Brighton.
There you go.
This is obviously a biodegradable straw because we care about the turtles.
Right on.
Yeah, in London they use a lot of pasta as straws, but because of the gluten stuff, I prefer paper.
Yeah. Awesome. That looks
I would totally marry you.
That's how lucky I am. Twice.
There you go. There you go. Very cool. Great drink. All right, let's put up your info here just so anybody can stay in touch. IG Doom Tiki. Tip jar PayPal at Cocktails if you'd like.
It's actually Doom Tiki NYC.
Oh, Doom Tiki NYC. Got it.
So
Correction.
that's
Who
okay.
is Doom Tiki? Somebody stole it?
No, there's a different pop-up that also does something similar that we weren't aware of.
Competitive Doom Tiki events.
Not at all. I'm just happy people are doing metal and tiki together.
Right.
And they tend not to be just, I think Awesome reached out to them. So we're hoping that we can all collaborate in the future because we're more about collaboration than competition.
Doom Tiki squared.
Yeah.
There you go. I do love how you it sounds like Doom metal is like the romance metal of metal. Based on your description.
The romance.
Think about it.
Yes. Romance.
Awesome.
The romance metal.
Romance metal. Let's just rename it.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. 5 questions. We're going to bring the team back. Oh, everybody wanted to see the cat, by the way. Can we get a little close up of the cat?
Which one?
Which one?
I don't know.
Look at.
Confused.
Oh, here's this one.
Oh, yeah. I meant the live one.
I think they're talking about bacon.
Okay.
Bacon. Sorry.
Oh, bacon, come on.
This is bacon.
This
I
is
don't know
bacon.
why he's being camera shot right now.
No, he's not here. I got him. He just got him. Hey.
All right. So 5 questions. We'll do this with you and Bacon at the same time, Sergio.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. So favorite Doom band to make Mai Tais to?
Well, Bacon and I both share Cadaver as the answer to that one. Honestly, I think partially because, as Chockie mentioned, that was our first concert date, but it's one I found to be, because I tend to listen to slightly faster stuff, speed metal, some metalcore like Walls of Jericho. So I found Cadaver to be, they play closer to what I normally listen to.
Yeah, they're more like stony, sometimes doomy,
Got it. All right. Favorite Tiki by the Sea memory?
The incredible amount of times when we tried to take a photo of everybody jumping in the air in front of a tiny coffee shop called Tiki.
Did you see the photo though? It was pretty dope.
Oh, it was a fantastic photo. Yeah.
You're gonna have to post that on your IG stories now.
My other favorite story is there's a picture of Oriol and myself where you can't tell which one of us is which. Of the two really, really bolding Tiki guys in similarly crazy shirts. It's just
That's hilarious. Favorite meal in Italy?
Pizza? That's my favorite meal everywhere.
Anywhere you go.
The giant porchetta we made.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was really amazing.
Ooh.
Chef Laura.
Chef Laura, murder business.
Crushed it.
Now I miss porchetta.
Oh, man.
There's
All
a
right.
few Italians in London.
Yeah. Porchetta was one of our other mutual loves because I worked for Sarah Jenkins in New York that had porchetta. So
I'm sensing a porchetta cocktail in the works here.
I made one.
Oh, yes, Liz.
You already did it.
I'll forward you specs.
Yes, love to try that. All right, weirdest thing you saw in Frigene. Weirdest thing.
Nate in his Speedo.
Nobody needs to see that, but they have. Yeah. Nate's my business partner on Avwa. Shout out to Nate Whitehouse and his Speedo. All right. Tell us about the London rum scene.
It is
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty damn cool. It's not huge. I tend to refer to the usual suspects of like 20 to 25 people who you get at every event, or maybe more, 15 to 20. But it's extremely committed, like incredibly committed. You can pretty much guarantee if you do something rummy, people will show up. And then the UK Rum Fest in London is one of the biggest ones in the world. This year notwithstanding, sadly, for obvious reasons. But we would have everyone from across the world. Last year we had Yoshi, who makes 9 Leaves in Japan. We had the guys from the Isan Distillery in Thailand. We had Jeff Berry. We had Martin Cate. We had a bunch of like exclusive cachaça producers from Brazil. We have the Seals every year, Gail and Richard from Barbados. We had Maggie Campbell. We had a bunch of Jamaican distillers. It's just the whole world comes together, and there's this wonderful series of seminars and tastings and everything, and everything is up until 7 p.m. Everything is just wonderful and friendly. And you learn lots, and then everybody comes down to Trailer for the after parties for a week, and all bets are off.
Mm-hmm. I will say in our the early stages of our actual dating, when we were in different countries and it was a rum week or the whole rum fest and everything, the text messages from him I've saved because they're
they kept the coherence of them kept dropping severely.
No 15-minute cocktails there.
No. 15-second daiquiris if it beats very soon.
There you go. We have a serious question now. I think it's for both of you guys. Biggest mistakes that someone might make while trying to do non-appropriating tropical stuff?
Not learning about like the cultures that have been, appropriated. Like learn about the people that have been appropriated, and like reach out to them and understand like their concepts and be like, there isn't an actual answer. My best answer for things is because I'm not a monolith for the indigenous community, as different, like he's not a monolith for Hungary or things like that. Like, go learn about the things that draw you to it. And then if you think, I guess it was also in my punch feature, but it's my best advice that I always say is don't be an asshole. If you think something's wrong with it, it probably is, and don't do it. If you feel in your gut that you shouldn't, listen to that, and then trust people that, trust other people's opinions that come from the communities that your concept that your concept touches. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That people who are affected
by
what you're doing. And I think, not understanding power structures and how they work. And this was something that has come up before. And Chockie mentioned it, that people were very angry at using like or satirizing Catholic imagery. But in the context of colonization, in the context of indigenous cultures, Catholicism has very much been a colonial force. It's been an oppressive force. So from that perspective, when you satirize it, you're inverting a power structure. You're punching up, not down. And understanding these power structures is very, very important to highlighting what can be done and what needs to be reversed and what can be learned from these cultures. Because otherwise it's an outside context thing. Otherwise you're just using, again, elements of a culture without placing it into a context.
And then one of the other things I will add is, if you want to work with different imageries and things like that, like go to the artists, go to the people that make it, learn from them. Like if you were to have like a Mexican concept, wouldn't you want to feature like a great artist or something like that? Be respectful and go to the place that you want to like create, and don't be a jerk.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really useful, especially just thinking about reaching out and learning before you do something. You know, a lot of people just throw something together, don't think much about it, and it's a problem. So I think it's really useful to think about who you should be reaching out to, who you should be talking to, what feedback you should be getting, engaging people in it actively who are from that culture, who have the knowledge that you wouldn't necessarily have. You know?
And I'd say one of the most important things too is don't treat people that come from cultures that are different than yours as past tense or as a museum object. We are all living, breathing people. And I might not come out dressed in like my regalia, which is what we call our stuff. But, you know, I wear stuff from like contemporary like artists from my culture and things like that. You know, I'm a person, I'm different. I go to metal shows. I have my indigenous community and things like that. But, you know, treating us like people and learning from us and exchanging and appreciating us back and forth and having that consent is the most important thing I think you can take away from that.
Awesome. Very cool. Super rad session. Really appreciate you guys.
I hope you guys learned something. And also, Aaron, I'm so sad I didn't get to have any of your mixers before I moved.
We'll work that international shipping thing out for you. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
very cool.
It was great to see all of you. And it's nice to see some people from home as I'm adjusting to the strange new world.
I mean, New York feels very far away to me too, as well. I haven't been there in a long time. It's good to talk about all the New York homies. Very cool. Next week, if you're in the US, we don't have a session because you should go vote. If you haven't already, get after it. As we said, we will have Sly on November 10th, so 2 weeks from now, talking about creating culture. Owner of Trailer Happiness, super excited about that. And thank you so much, guys. Really amazing.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with settling in and all that. Hope the internet works. Enjoy the cocktail.
Thank you. Bye.